Welcome to the Rich Carroll program. I am your host, Rich Carroll. I was reading a pretty interesting article the other day, and I was like, I've got to share this with the audience. And it's titled, Here Are 8 Stubborn Facts on Gun Violence in America. And you can find it over at the Daily Signal. Now, this piece is good because it's chock full of information and statistics about guns and gun violence. And towards the beginning of this piece, there was one particular sentence that caught my eye. It says, as emotions morph from grief to anger to resolve, it is vitally important to supply facts so that policymakers and professionals can fashion solutions based on objective data rather than well-intended but misguided emotional fixes. What a great point. Oftentimes in the aftermath of a mass shooting, there are proposals that are made based more on emotion than with rational thought. And we have to know the facts. And we can't jump to solutions that are basically in the end going to cause more harm than good. So let's dive right in. I'm going to read the 8 facts, and I've highlighted a couple of the sub-data points, and hopefully you guys enjoy this article like I did. Fact number 1, America is relatively safe, and the trend is toward becoming safer. The 2011 homicide rate was almost half of the rate in 1991. And according to Pew Research Center, the 2013 gun-related death rate was half of the rate in 1993. So we've seen a decrease. There have been minor increases in certain types of violent crimes, mainly in large metropolitan areas. And they are largely related to gang activity. And we know what a law-abiding group the gangs are. Fact number 2. The principal public safety concerns are suicides and illegally owned handguns. Now, you may not realize that the data is like this, but gun suicides outnumber gun homicides. In 2010 alone, over 19,000 Americans used guns to kill themselves. So we have a suicide problem more so than we have a homicide problem. Most gun-related crimes are carried out with illegally owned firearms. Some estimates have it up to as much as 80%. So these aren't your NRA members who are running out killing people. Here's a point for you. More people are stabbed to death every year than are murdered with rifles. Can anyone say assault knife ban? Fact number 3. A small number of factors significantly increase the likelihood that a person will be a victim of a gun-related homicide. This is from the Crime Prevention Research Center. Pretty staggering statistic. Over 50% of murders occur in 2% of the nation's 3,142 counties. People recently or currently involved in an abusive, intimate relationship are much more likely to be victims of gun-related homicide than is the rest of the population. You know, that point right there, that makes me think of the laws that were just passed in Florida. You have to wait 3 days to buy a gun on most purchases, and you have to be 21 to buy a gun. And Thomas Massey of Kentucky, he made the point, he said, what is a 20-year-old single mother supposed to do if her life is in danger? She can't go out and buy a gun because she's got to wait 3 days. And if she's under 21, she can't buy a gun because there's an age limit there. So if she's got some ex-husband or ex-boyfriend who's beating on the door trying to harm her and possibly her kids, then she's got to wait 7 to 8 minutes for the cops to get there. And what is she supposed to do in that time if that guy gets through? I believe she should be able to own a gun. Fact number 4. The perpetration of gun-related murders is often carried out by predictable people. Almost all mass public shooters have extensive histories of mental health issues. I don't know if you guys saw yesterday, but the AP broke the news that the Parkland shooter, back in 2016, the authorities recommended that he be involuntarily committed because of a history of mental problems. Now, they didn't act on it, but the fact is they knew back in 2016 this guy had problems. Fact number 5. higher rates of gun ownership are not associated with higher rates of violent crime. Switzerland and Israel have much higher gun ownership rates than the United States, but experience far fewer homicides and have much lower violent crime rates than many European nations with strict gun laws. Higher rates of concealed carry permit holders are even more strongly associated with reduction in violent crime than our right to carry states. Here's one. The rate of gun ownership is higher in rural areas than in urban areas, but urban areas experience higher murder rates. Chances are, if you're in Chicago, you're going to be shot at before this video is over. Homicide. Here's where it gets interesting. Homicide and firearm homicide rates in Great Britain spiked in the years immediately following the imposition of severe gun control measures. Ireland's homicide rates spiked in the years immediately following the country's 1972 gun confiscation legislation. Australia's armed and unarmed robbery rates both increased in the 5 years immediately following the National Firearms Act. Great Britain has some of the strictest gun control laws in the world, but violent crime rate for homicide, rape, burglary, and aggravated assault is much higher than that in the U.S. Fact number 7. Legally owned firearms are used for lawful purposes much more often than they are used to commit crimes or suicide. In 2013, a report compiled by the Institute of Medicine and National Research Council found that firearms are used defensively hundreds of thousands of times every year. And the story goes on. It points out 6 or 7 different stories on where AR-15s particularly have been used to save lives. You guys ought to check that out. And fact number 8. Concealed carry permit holders are not the problem, but they may be part of the solution. Between 2007 and 2015, murder rates dropped 16% and violent crime rates dropped 18%, even though the percentage of adults with concealed carry permits rose by 190%. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I encourage you to read the entire article because there is so much more information to help light the way through the gun debate. And this piece could be a good launching pad for proposing solutions to gun violence by empowering law-abiding citizens instead of punishing them for the sins of the few. As always, I'm Rich Carroll. Thank you for tuning in. God bless.